You still miss drugs?
Oh, yeah. You have any? Yes, I do.
Carrie Fisher had cocaine, morphine, codeine, and oxycodone in her system when she was hospitalized after suffering a massive heart attack on board a flight to LAX. So some idiot in my audience writes to me, in complete stunned disbelief that I really am morally opposed to using cocaine. Do you think buying cocaine is wrong because cocaine production is horrible? Or because it turns you into a cokehead? Or both? He says of himself, I don't buy cocaine not because it will turn me into a cokehead, which it wouldn't if I used it responsibly. Yeah, right. You don't think DMX and Carrie Fisher and Jim Adachi, you don't think all of them thought they were using it responsibly? You don't think with his elite level of education and his incredibly powerful position in society, Jeff Adachi, this guy, the public defender, you don't think he was sitting there thinking, it won't happen to me? I'm not like those other crackheads. I'm special. Oh, no, I won't have to deal with the consequences of my actions the way they will. And I won't have to go to jail, even though I myself have been responsible for putting other people in jail for committing exactly the same crime. I'll get away with it. Oh, no, brain damage caused by this drug, that's something that happens to other people, not to me. I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the responsible users. No, homie. If you huff glue, you get brain damage. If you drink alcohol, you get brain damage. If you use antidepressants, you get brain damage. And you know what? Go ahead and do a few Google searches if there's any doubt in your mind that cocaine causes brain damage. Ew. You know that bald guy about his tail? The guy who does that channel? Active Research Informed Opinion? I always knew he was secretly conservative. I mean, he says he'd vote for Bernie Sanders. But have you heard what he says about cocaine and quote-unquote neurodiversity? I always knew he was secretly a conservative deep down inside. It's just waiting to come out. Yeah. Amazingly, people in my audience rage quit over my statement in passing that using cocaine is a bad thing. And I think I made a statement even more briefly in passing. Yes, I do support, in short, a get tough on drugs legislative approach to the problem.
What do you miss?
Codeine.
Why?
That was all I ever liked. It was like, I never liked alcohol. I never liked street drugs.
Let's pretend we all grew up reading Plato. There was a time when this was a common exercise in the classroom. Plato gives you this vision of a society in which the police are philosophers, in which the police are pillars of civic virtue, in which the police teach us morality and maintain public morality. And you say, this is not the real world, Plato. Plato, you just don't have that down. Come on, who watches the Watchmen? Who polices the police? If you really believe the role of the police in society is to invigilate the average man, then who is it that has even more integrity than the police who invigilates the conduct of the police? If the average man struggles with the temptation for cocaine addiction and the police, their job is to keep us sober, who's going to prevent the police from becoming a much greater? Oh, right! It's people like Jeff Adachi. It's people like public defender and quote-unquote police watchdog Jeff Adachi. This is the man who polices the police force. But looky here. Adachi's death caused by cocaine and alcohol use. Autopsy finds. Wait a minute. Maybe I didn't take this analysis back far enough. Okay. So there's the general public, and then the police, they basically keep the public in line. They enforce the law. And then there's this special guy, Jeff Adachi, and he polices the police. So who polices the policeman for the police, right? So what's the next step? Who is it that keeps Jeff Adachi honest if Jeff Adachi's job is to keep the police honest and the police, they're supposed to keep us honest? How does that work? Oh, it's like a circle. It's the public. It's the general public who votes for, who elects Jeff Adachi. So if this guy, Jeff Adachi, if he had this dissolute sex life and he was a drug fiend and he died with cocaine and all these other drugs in his bloodstream in the company of this mysterious woman, Catalina, a Colombian national being sought by the police, who nobody is suggesting was a prostitute, but some woman whose company he was enjoying in the nude in a room that had contraceptives scattered about, and bedclothes scattered off the bed and so on. Well, this dissolute life this guy was leading. So he would have to face up to public scrutiny about that, right? He'd have to stand for election. And the electorate and the press, they'd investigate his conduct, they'd weigh the good and the bad, and they'd really judge him harshly, right? He'd live his whole life under scrutiny for his moral conduct, because his job is to scrutinize the moral conduct of the police, right? That'd be a really high level. I'm sorry. 100% of people voted for him in his last election. 100%. I can't remember a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that got 100%. Definitely not any of the Star Wars movies in the last 20 years got 100%. Jeff Adachi, cocaine addict. Hey, not just cocaine. He had all kinds of drugs in his system. Jeff Adachi leading a totally dissolute, totally immoral, self-indulgent lifestyle. He got 100% in the elections. I feel there's some kind of weakness here. Could it be that journalists and members of the establishment weren't really interested in scrutinizing his conduct, weren't really interested in exposing this problem to the public? Could it be that some of them today feel a little bit of guilt? Because if they had done their job, Jeff Adachi, his life would have been saved. Maybe he would have been arrested. Maybe he would have spent a short time in jail. But then he would have had to get clean. He would have had to get sober. And he'd still be alive today. Quote, I'm worried that we're going into a direction that we shouldn't, right? I don't think any of us are perfect. And I think the personal things should remain personal, close quote. That's a quote from a district attorney, George Gascon. George, you hypocrite. How many people have you put behind bars? How many people have you put in jail for the exact same conduct that Jeff Adachi had? Why is it that the whole establishment closes ranks behind this guy, tries to defend him, defend his reputation, and even claim that it's unreasonable for the public to know about his so-called private life? Why is it that any normal person would go to jail for doing this, but not a member of the economic elite like Jeff Adachi? Other substances found in Adachi's system included marijuana, Zantac, ibuprofen, and benzodiazepines at levels too small to quantify. The blood levels of these substances indicate that they had been consumed at some point during the day. This was all in one day. It wasn't even nighttime when the body was discovered. So he must have woken up bright and early and started doing a combination of cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, Zantac, and more. We don't even know which benzodiazepine it is. A lot of those are used as recreational drugs. This was his day in the company of his female friend, not his wife, Catalina. Yeah, and that's the man who is the quote-unquote police watchdog. That's the man who's policing the police on your account. And every journalist and every member of the establishment wants to let him say, "Oh, well, it's his personal life. We should just respect his privacy. We should just regard this as beyond good and evil." Right. Look, guys, I'm not a hypocrite. If I'm going to be interrogated by a police officer, I want that police officer to be sober. I don't want that police officer to be stoned or drunk. I don't want him to just use cocaine once in a while. I want the police force to be 100% sober. And I want Jeff Adachi, who invigilates the police force, to be 100% sober. And guess what? I'm not a hypocrite. I want myself to live up to that same standard. I'm not going to make excuses for myself and imagine that I'm on some lower level, that I don't answer to the same kind of responsibility as a police officer. In my own small, sad way, I have to take responsibility for my conduct. I have to take responsibility for the quality of my character. And the most fundamental first step to doing that is sobriety, is refusing cocaine. And I expect it of you and you and you in the audience. Okay? And if you can't live up to it, you're a scumbag. You're a scumbag just like Jeff Adachi, who's a scumbag and he's a disgrace. And none of these people will come out and say it. None of these people will come out and say it. And none of these people will say, if the police had arrested him, the police had put him in jail for 2 weeks, way back at the beginning, when he started on this downward spiral, it would have saved his life. He could still be here today. He could be living a better life than he lived during all those years. If his downward spiral, if the progress of the scumbagification of Jeff Adachi, if that had been halted with an arrest, with a search, with a prison sentence, it could have saved his life.
We apologize to the Adachi family for that report being released.
But police weren't just on hand to apologize. They were at City Hall to field questions from city supervisors who say the leak was a deliberate targeting of Adachi, a public defender whose career was largely defined by his dogged criticism of the police department.
To have that type of maligning going on of a public official in San Francisco is disgusting.
It was despicable what the police department did to myself and my daughter by releasing the police report.
Quote, many city leaders praised his work as a relentless defender of indigent clients. A police watchdog, there's that phrase, a police watchdog. Who polices the police? Cokehead, Jeff Adachi, policing the police. A police watchdog and a criminal justice reformer. Few, though, wanted to comment on Friday's autopsy results. Supervisor Sandra Lee Fewer, who called for a public hearing after a police report was leaked to the media after Adachi's death, said Friday, quote, what people do in their personal lives and in their own personal time is private, period, close quote. Would you have voted for him if you knew this? You scumbag hypocrite. Don't you think the public had a right to know? Don't you think the public had a right to know who this guy really was? How about the police? How about the police who he was policing as their quote-unquote watchdog? Don't you think they had a right to know? Don't you think they should have gone to the polls in an open and honest and transparent way, the reality of who this scumbag was, that he should have been elected, that he should have either won or lost the election based on the reality of who he was, not an illusion that you helped him to maintain? And hey, don't you have a human heart? How many people have you put behind bars for these same crimes? Equal protection under the laws. Equal punishment under the laws. Jeff Adachi should have had his day in court and gone to prison like thousands and thousands of others do every day. And he should have done it for the same reasons, and it would have saved his life. And instead, you helped cover it up. You helped make it all sound so respectable, even now after his death. Cost him his life. And who knows what other negative consequences there were having that guy in a position of power, in a position of authority for so many years. The 25-page autopsy report details Adachi's final moments in dispassionate detail. It includes interviews with witnesses and police, details about Adachi's anatomy, as well as toxicology report that found cocaine, alcohol, and benzodiazepines in his system. Benzodiazepines such as Valium or Xanax are widely prescribed. No comment on whether or not he had a prescription for Xanax or if he was doing it illegally. Carrie Fisher was basically a multimillionaire from the age of 19. She was set for life from an early age. She was a feminist icon. She was a role model to young girls all around the world. Carrie Fisher's autopsy reveals a cocktail of drugs, including cocaine, opiates, and ecstasy. That is not the whole list of drugs that were in her blood at the time of her death. That is not the whole list of drugs she abused during her short life. She may have looked 80. She might have sounded 80. But she died at age 60. This is what her brother Todd said when she was still in intensive care, in between life and death. Quote, if everyone could just pray for her, that would be good. Close quote. Imagine all those little girls all around America, all around the world, all the little girls who bought the doll, who have a doll of Princess Leia, who have an action figure of Princess Leia. Imagine all the grown women for whom, this had been an icon. And let's just imagine at least half of them are dumb enough that they still believe in Jesus, that they're praying. They're praying to baby Jesus in the sky. They're praying to the sky god, Jesus. Okay? I don't know, maybe they're praying to Odin. I doubt it. Okay? Just think about those prayers all around the world. And who and what are they really praying for? Carrie Fisher had cocaine, morphine, codeine, and oxycodone in her system when she was hospitalized after suffering a massive heart attack on board a flight to LAX. I really did search around. Carrie Fisher has a long history of drug use, and she has a long history of writing about and kind of admitting the drug use. Like, she didn't really keep it secret. I couldn't find any record of her being arrested or doing jail time. Why not? DMX got arrested and went to jail again and again and again, basically for drug-related charges his whole life. It's probably why DMX is still alive today. What if back when she was 19, back when she was first starting on this downward spiral, Carrie Fisher was arrested and went to jail for 2 weeks? And she learned wow, you have responsibilities, kid. And all your responsibilities begin with sobriety. Your responsibilities begin with the refusal to use cocaine. And then maybe a few years later, maybe she's 22 and it's her second offense and she gets arrested. She gets a search warrant, that kind of situation. Guess what, kid? This is your second warning. You're in court on really serious charges, cocaine possession. Okay? If she had been through a few arrests, if she had been in and out of jail, could have saved her life. She'd still be alive today. She'd be in way better health today. And she could have done much more meaningful things with her life. Nobody had more privilege. Chance of a lifetime. She could have done anything she wanted to with her life. Morally, artistically, in terms of charity work, politics, she could have done absolutely anything. As I say, she was really a kind of feminist icon. She took this role of the damsel in distress and transformed it. She took the role of the pampered princess and said, no, I'm going to be the pugnacious princess. I'm going to be the princess who's out to rescue the whole universe, not the princess who's waiting for you to rescue me. I'm going to be the princess who's bossy and in charge. It was an interesting little, it was a suffragette, inversion of your expectations about the damsel in distress story. Very powerful cultural symbol in many ways. And what did she do with it? She became a crackhead. She became a cocaine addict. She became a drug user. And this is how she died. The LA County coroner released its full autopsy, including toxicology, and revealed the slew of drugs. In addition to the cocaine and opiates found in a urine analysis, there was also a very small amount of MDMA, a drug commonly known as ecstasy, and heroin. All of these drugs in her system simultaneously. The report says it's unclear how much of a role, if any, the drugs played in her death on December 20th. It's really good to be skeptical about that. What was the role of drug addiction in her general downward spiral life and in her death specifically? It's tough to say. Okay? As we told you on Friday, the coroner announced sleep apnea and other undetermined factors were the cause of death. That's very considerate of the coroner to leave it up to your imagination. But you know what? I don't think that's the full list of the drugs she was on. According to Variety, in addition to the illegal drugs, Fisher was also taking Prozac, Abilify, and Lamictal under prescription. She was also taking oxycodone without a prescription. So some idiot in my audience writes to me in complete stunned disbelief that I really am morally opposed to using cocaine. Wait, to clarify, do you think buying cocaine is wrong because cocaine production is horrible? Or because it turns you into a cokehead? Or both? He says of himself, I don't buy cocaine not because it will turn me into a cokehead, which it wouldn't if I used it responsibly. Yeah, right. You don't think DMX and Carrie Fisher and Jeff Adachi, you don't think all of them thought they were using it responsibly? You don't think with his elite level of education and his incredibly powerful position in society, Jeff Adachi, this guy, the public defender, you don't think he was sitting there thinking, it won't happen to me. I'm not like those other crackheads. I'm special. Oh, no, I won't have to deal with the consequences of my actions the way they will. And I won't have to go to jail, even though I myself have been responsible for putting other people in jail for committing exactly the same crime. I'll get away with it. Oh, no, brain damage caused by this drug, that's something that happens to other people, not to me. I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the responsible users. No, homie. If you huff glue, you get brain damage. If you drink alcohol, you get brain damage. If you use antidepressants, you get brain damage. And you know what? Go ahead and do a few Google searches if there's any doubt in your mind that cocaine causes brain damage. So not because he thinks he'd become a cokehead, which he doesn't believe would happen if he used it responsibly. Quote, but because I don't want to fund gangs who chop off people's heads, close quote. Well, gee, you and I really disagree about a lot of things. Quote, so you're saying that you would use cocaine if it were grown in your own backyard? I would not. I would refuse to use cocaine, even if, for example, it were grown in a university research facility's greenhouse and were offered to me without any possible external negative consequences. His reply is, yes, I don't see the problem with using cocaine recreationally every now and then. The health effects are minimal. The health effects are minimal if you do it every few months, as far as I know. But even if I were to destroy my own health with it, I could do the same with cigarettes and alcohol. Are those morally okay to buy? No! The only reasonable argument against quote-unquote ethical coke I can think of is that it will negatively impact society in some drastic way because people overuse and cannot handle the addiction of something. But this sounds suspiciously like Prohibition-era argumentation. Let me just say something to you, stranger. The next time a police officer pulls you over and interrogates you for any reason, whether they have a good reason or not, I'll bet you wish and you pray that that police officer is sober and not high on cocaine or not trying to get money for his cocaine habit. I'll bet you wish and you pray that when you deal with an authority figure like a police officer, that they're clean and sober. I'll bet you wish and you pray that when you deal with a university professor, and a lot of people have dealt with this, when you have a university professor, someone who has power over you, someone who decides whether you get the scholarship or not, whether you get an A, a B, or a C, someone kicks you, I'll bet you wish and you hope that that authority figure is clean and sober and not on cocaine. And you know what? Let's take this down to the most intimate human scale. Little babies, little children who depend on their parents for everything, including wisdom and guidance. There is no dependency more keenly felt than the dependency of a child upon his or her parent. Children need their parents to be sober, with much more unspoken desperation than you as a citizen need the policeman to be sober when the policeman is interrogating you. It's a much more dire and desperate need, and children are voiceless and powerless to have recourse to some other parent if their parent is a cocaine addict. And there will be people right now in this audience who know the horror of growing up with a parent who's an alcoholic, growing up with a parent who's a cocaine addict, growing up with a parent like Carrie Fisher who's using a whole bunch of drugs, including heroin, you name it. Okay, there's nothing more terrible. But then you know what you have to do? You have to pause and reflect on the responsibilities you have in your own life and realize, you have to ask yourself, am I not, in some sense, on the same level as a policeman, as a professor, as a parent? Do I not have responsibilities that oblige me, that make it my obligation to be sober and responsible, to refuse to use cocaine? Or am I just such a scumbag that I would write myself off and never think of myself on that same level as those authority figures? Jeff Adachi, you were supposed to police the police officers, but instead you became a scumbag and a crackhead and a drug addict. You became a dissolute, self-indulgent piece of crap, and you died. You paid the ultimate price. You paid with your life. But you brought shame on your office and shame on your whole society. Carrie Fisher, you were supposed to be a symbol of, I'll use that phrase, a new hope. You were a role model to millions of little girls all around the world. You gave it up, and you ultimately gave up your life. For what? Cocaine.
Da, 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 da.